My name is Dr. Matt Rostami, and I've decided to do a video about where billions of your tax dollars are going. And it's going to the Holy Land, Israel Palestine. I just left that as the Holy Land so we can make everyone happy, which means everyone's going to be upset. So I have noticed that a lot of you love to share your opinion about the conflict, even though you don't even know basic geography. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. People just have no idea about the history, basic stuff, but they shamelessly, on both sides, will just let an avalanche of shit come out of their mouth, which is their opinions. So we're going to go over to some basic geography and then the history, just the facts, and then we'll talk more about my opinion, which means nothing, just like your opinion, because we're not in charge. So let's start with, let's see, this area here, this is the land, Israel or Palestine, whatever you want to call it, okay? Here is Egypt, okay? Here is the Mediterranean Sea. Here is Jordan. And here is Syria. And here is Lebanon, okay? And this area is where all the action is, okay? So we're going to try to get through this really quickly. In 1948, the UN decided to give different parts to different groups. War happened. So what happened was the Arab countries, they came in and they took a chunk of this land. So the Egyptians ended up taking this little area here, and Jordan ended up taking this stuff here, and Jerusalem being right in the center, okay? And Jerusalem was split in half. 1948. Okay, we got that? All right, good. So this area became, this is known as the West Bank, and this is Gaza. All right? 1967. Something called the Six-Day War. War happened. Israel took over the West Bank and Gaza. So all of it came under Israeli control. Okay? So again, I'm not going to get into why the war started and all that stuff. I'm just trying to get you caught up to what the situation is now. Because a lot of you guys don't even understand what's going on the ground. And this is the problem. So in Israel, this area here is where Israeli law is what it is. Because that's their legit country. Okay? So in here is basically 80% Jews and 20% Arabs. Okay? These 20% Arabs are the Arabs that kind of stuck around the whole time while they were in this area. Regardless of the wars and all that stuff, they stood their ground, they stayed there, okay? And roughly, I think the population is like around 8 million in total inside of this area here, inside of Israel, okay? By the way, Tel Aviv, the capital, is over here, and Jerusalem is more inland, just for reference. So 80% of the 8 million is Jews and 20% of the 8 million is Arabs, okay? Now, inside of Gaza, there's 2 million Arabs, okay? And inside of the West Bank, there's around, I think like 5 or 6 million Arabs, okay? There's some settlements in there too. There's some Jewish Israelis living there. I think it's maybe like around 300,000 or something like that. The point is, the majority of the West Bank is just Arabs in there, okay? Now, Gaza is ran by Hamas, okay? Hamas is a terrorist organization, liberation movement, whatever you want to call it, but they have a Islamic ideology. That's what they believe. They believe in religious law reigns supreme. They believe in a theocracy. And they don't recognize Israel at all. They're the ones who attacked Israel on October 7th. In West Bank, there is what's called the PLO. That's the Palestinian Liberation Organization. I'm not going to get into different factions of it, but basically what you need to understand is in the West Bank is separate from the leadership of Hamas. They're more secular, quote unquote, moderate Arabs, even though in the past they have done terror attacks as well. But they have an agreement with Israel. It's not a complete recognition of each other, but they actually do work together, okay? Inside of the West Bank, now you would think that, okay, so do the Palestinians run the West Bank? Not necessarily. Inside the West Bank, where's my there are different areas. There are areas A, let me put it right in here so you don't get confused. A, B, and C, okay? Area C, these are areas that are kind of more on like the outskirts of the strip. This is where Israel is in control, okay? Area B, these are kind of like intermediate areas where both Israel and the PLO work together. And Area A, this is where it's just the PLO on their own. They have an agreement with Israel that these are the cities that we administer. We have our own like laws and whatever, okay? Now, the West Bank is under military occupation. So even though the PLO does have some autonomy on areas A, the Israeli military can just go in whenever they want and do whatever they have to do. Whatever it's like to hunt terrorists, if they want to confiscate land, they can basically do whatever they want to the Palestinians. Area C is completely off limit to Palestinians. They can't go at all to those areas. If they do, they get arrested, shot, killed, all sorts of stuff. Okay? So you got like around 5 or 6 million Arabs living in this area. I've been to the West Bank. It's not nice. You got checkpoints everywhere. You got people's houses are like divided in half because the Israelis have decided to take some parts of it and do what they want. It just completely disrupts people's lives. They don't have any rights to vote. They don't have any individual liberty. Basically nothing. It's whatever the military says. And that's how they live in the West Bank. In Gaza, until October 7th, it was basically just Hamas running it. No one else, the Israelis were not in there. They had withdrawn out of Gaza back in 2006. Okay? So the Gaza is run by Hamas. They have complete control over it. The West Bank is run by a joint work between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Israelis, but they basically work together to make sure Israel can conduct its military occupation. And inside this area is basically the country of Israel that kind of divides these two areas. Okay, so when you talk about Palestine, you're talking about West Bank and Gaza. That's what people are typically referring to. Okay, and Jerusalem is cut in half. But after the Six-Day War, the Israelis have basically brought the city together. So you really can't tell the difference between the East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem when you're there. It's basically the same thing at this point. Inside of Israel, the 20% Arabs, they typically have pretty decent rights compared to the rest of the Arab world, where basically you get thrown in jail, for just speaking out. Though I will say after October 7th, it seems that the Israeli government has really cracked down on any sort of freedom of expression, especially on their Arab Israeli citizens. And if you're a Jewish Israeli, you should be worried about that, because in America, we've seen how this go. After a terror attack, what the government does is they take away your rights away. So you may think they're just trying to keep you safe, but there's more stuff going on there. And that's basically the situation. As you can see, it's a bit complicated, but that's just the basics of it. You have the West Bank, Gaza, run by Hamas, areas A, B, and C, military dictatorship, no rights for the Palestinians, no freedom of movement or anything like that, and they're basically trapped. And then you have Israel right in the center here. And that's basically the facts of what's going on. And the funny thing is, most people don't know this stuff. Yet they all seem to have an opinion about what's going on here. Because if you knew this, if you had an idea what it was, then we can have a serious discussion.